the work of an Iowa-based organization bailing out Benji kind of helped spark this investigation. Can you tell me about that?
That resolution filed in King County Superior Court requires the company to pay the state $3.75 million with interest.
Bailing out Benji
regularly looks through these records of dogs' movement from state to state.
Bailing out Benji
played a key part in unraveling a nationwide puppy scheme.
Bailing out Benji,
an organization that's been working across the country to stop the pipeline of puppy mill breeders.
Bailing out Benji.
I will use my voice because they don't have one, and I will keep doing it until there are no more puppy mill dogs.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Truth, Lies, and Puppy Mills, Bailing Out Benji's podcast. I am Kristen. I am here with Mindy, and we're going to continue our talk about messaging. I feel like it's been a long time since I have opened the podcast because I definitely had no idea what I was supposed to say. So
that's so funny.
That felt really awkward.
It's been a long time since we've recorded.
Well, that's true.
Like,
that's true.
Even Hannah's episode was Zoom.
Yeah.
The one before that we released this week, well, the week we're recording,
yeah,
we recorded all the way in November.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. That's why I was listening to that one this morning, and I was like, wow, we did this a long time ago. So that one sat in the queue for a while.
So your headband matches your sweater.
I know.
In a really cute way.
That's intentional.
Oh, yeah. I just noticed it this, like, right now.
Yeah.
Not earlier.
Yeah, it's the best headband ever, and they're adorable. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about, like, are our mics even going to work? Like, did we charge them up? Like, it's been so long.
We're very rusty.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. But so you mentioned talking to Hannah last week on Zoom, great conversation about messaging changes and the work that she's been doing in the rescue and shelter world to help change perspectives and change messaging and that kind of stuff there. And so that work has only just begun on the puppy mill side. And so we had a great conversation with her last week about that and how important that is. And so, yeah, now we're kind of following it up with more. Like, if you haven't caught on, this is our theme for January at least.
Right. And we have tried like a small group of people where we're trying to group think and trying to see how we can change messaging on a larger scale. Mm-hmm. That's very in its infancy as well. But that was because of Hannah.
Yeah. So Hannah's organization, Spark, did like a little focus group, I guess, with a few puppy mill advocacy groups, and it was just a 3-session series of talks where she kind of did some presenting on the importance of messaging, and not even specific to puppy mills or even animal advocacy. It was just examples in general of how important it is to be cognizant of our messaging. And one of the things that really, really stood out for me from that, because I am of a certain generation, so I hope some of our listeners are also from that similar, one might say greatest generation. I don't want to say that. That sounds bad. But like one of the examples she used was seatbelts. So like back in the 80s, seatbelts were made legal, but no one was here for it. Like not at all. Like no, we don't want to wear them.
I remember seeing the videos, like they're resurfacing now on TikTok of people being like, you can't tell me to wear a seatbelt. There are some that are like, you can't tell me not to drink and drive.
Right.
I just got off work and I want my 8 ounces of beer on my way home.
Yes.
And it was that pushback from.
Yep. And we know exactly what happens in this country when you tell people they have to do something, right? Like it doesn't go over well. And so that was with this trying to mandate seatbelt use met with that same thing. Listen, I remember when I was a kid driving down the highway, no seatbelt. My dad had a beer in his hand and we would throw garbage out the window.
Yeah. That
was how we lived. Thank goodness we now know better and do better. But so that was one of the examples that she used to talk about how they flipped their marketing strategy to get people to buy into wearing seatbelts, and how just that flip was what was so effective to get that change to where now it's a reflex. You don't even think about it. You get in the car, you put on your seatbelt. So that was, I love that example because I could relate with it quite well because I lived through that time. But so after that 3-week session, one of the people in the group said, it was kind of funny because we'd been talking 3 sessions about this messaging. And at the end of it, Grace says, maybe we should just all talk about can we just agree on one definition of puppy mill? And Hannah was like, that's a great idea. You all should explore that. Like, I am doing 3 sessions, go in peace, like go flourish, which was amazing to be able to launch this thing. So, so a few of us are continuing to meet. We started right before the holidays, so it was stop and go. So we have a meeting at the end of the month here. But that's kind of what we're talking about is we've got a Google Doc going where we've got things like, what's your definition of a puppy mill? What's your definition of a commercial breeder? What's your definition of this? And so before we meet next time, we're all just kind of going in and just dropping. Here's what me personally or my organization says these things are. And then when we get together, we'll kind of go through those and see, like, where are we the same? Where are we different? Can we get to a place where there is a singular definition for some of these terms so that as we are having conversations in the community or with puppy buyers or with advocates or with breeders or whoever, lawmakers, can we get on the same page with the words that we're using so that they have more power? Yeah. So
because our words do matter.
Yeah.
They carry a lot of weight. And I do want to say, and I want to repeat because I think you did say it, the group is advocacy groups. It's not this, we haven't opened it up to like the world at large.
Right.
These are the people who are every single day making decisions that affect advocates on the ground and affect policy. So really strengthening what we're saying and being on the same page matters, because a few episodes ago, we're talking about the term commercial breeder and how a lot of people think that term means something different.
Yeah.
And we get mad at each other because of how we perceive that word.
Yeah.
It's confusing lawmakers. It's confusing the public. And so how can we really, really simplify and dissect what we're saying?
Yeah.
So.
And we had talked about, I don't know if we settled on if we were going to talk about this or not, but yesterday at lunch playing our game.
Yeah.
We had talked about whether we were going to talk about it or not, but I'm just going to go there. So we were playing this game yesterday. We went out to lunch as a team, and we're playing a game while we were waiting for our food to get there. And it's where, see if I can explain it well. It's, so if it's my turn, I show everybody a card. I can't see it. And I tell them which number of word I want. And then they each have to write one word to get me to guess what the word on my card is.
Yes. So you can't see the word.
Right.
We can all see it. And then we have to decide what hint we give you.
Yeah. What is the one word that's going to get her to guess this? And every time I was trying to write a word, I'm thinking, well, there's an obvious answer.
Yes.
Like if one of the words that Alexis had was Sahara. And I'm like, well, the obvious answer is desert.
Yeah.
And so then I'm like, okay, but everybody's going to write desert because that's the obvious way to describe Sahara.
Yeah.
But I would write it. And then we all three had different.
Yeah. You would say like, well, I'm going to choose the obvious one. And I was like, yeah, I'm not. But wait, mine seems really obvious too.
Yes. So I'm assuming everybody's first thought when I see the word Sahara, everybody's first thought is desert.
Yeah.
And it wasn't.
Mine was hot because the phrase is hotter than the Sahara.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So like if I say hot,
yeah.
and I knew somebody else, because the goal was to use the context clues, right?
Right.
The
so
three
if
of us
all
picking
three
different
have different
words,
clues.
but we couldn't communicate.
Right. Yeah. So that was a very timely, eye-opening experience, how I assume everyone thinks the same thing when they hear a word.
Right.
Like everybody thinks like me. And I don't know why I assume that, because I've been on this planet a long time and I know I think very differently than a lot of people. But it was fun to see it play out that way, not even intentionally. We weren't even thinking about work. We were just playing. And you had said, I wish there was a way we could incorporate this game into our messaging. And then I'm listening to our podcast episode this week and I was like, oh my gosh, like there it is. That's the thing. When I say puppy mill, 5 people are thinking 5 different things. When I say commercial breeder, 5 people are thinking 5 different things. Like, and we just assume everyone is on board with what we're saying.
Right. And I think by assuming that, that's what gets us a lot of followers. Like we are cultivating crowds of people. We are not cultivating people who have strong messaging to pass on. Like I feel like in the past, our tactic has been to give talking points that people can easily regurgitate, whether or not they fully understand what they're regurgitating. Okay. And we're trying to kind of separate that a bit, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Just encouraging people to think more.
Or realize that
deeper.
People all think differently.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really hard part, because like we talk about it all the time. Like you walk into a room and you kind of assume based on the room you're walking into that you all have the same thoughts, beliefs, values, all of that. And then someone will say something and you're like, oh, we are different. We are very different. But you don't always know that until you start talking and communicating.
And you don't, as long as your intention isn't to be provocative, you want to keep that in mind, because you don't, if you're trying to have a conversation, you don't want to say something that is immediately going to shut that person down, because I'm assuming you're on the same page as I am. I'm going to go off and you're like, oh, I am done listening to this person because she just said something that offends me. So like as long as our goal is to build connection and have conversations, we need to be careful to not assume everybody's on our same page, because then we're going to say things that, if we walk in and we're cursing people who are buying dogs, and then you realize this person just came to us to ask about how to effectively buy a dog, like, oh, well, now we've just burnt that bridge and they're not going to pay attention.
And I think that kind of fleshed out during those initial messaging meetings that we were sitting in on, when you talked about the seatbelts and how it was flipping the thoughts to make people okay with seatbelts, right? And okay with wearing them. I think a lot of the people on the calls initially went into the meetings thinking that our job is to convert puppy buyers to puppy adopters. And so they went into it thinking, oh yeah, let's switch our messaging to try to get them to do what we still want them to do at the end of the day. And while I still think there are people who will flip and adopt because they hear or they find a dog or whatever, there is a world of people who aren't. And right now our messaging stops at who's buying. Like we don't want them to buy, so we ignore them and leave them out of the conversation.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
Well, I guess we can get right into it. We can read aloud a definition of puppy mill.
Yeah.
It's one that I think it's a working definition, but it's one that we kind of came across and we think it fits. I don't know. I'll read it out loud and we can talk about it. But a puppy mill is a dog breeding operation offering dogs for monetary compensation in which the physical, psychological, and or behavioral needs of all or some of the dogs are not consistently fulfilled due to inadequate housing, shelter, staffing, nutrition, socialization, sanitation, exercise, veterinary care, and or inappropriate breeding. So
yeah,
to me,
checks a lot of boxes.
It does, right? And it's a definition that focuses on the animal. And a lot of those terms are the violations that we often see. So we can start defining puppy mill based on how the animals are being raised and the care that they're receiving. I don't know. How do you feel
versus
about that?
just saying any breeder is a puppy mill, or if you have more than this number of pets, you're a puppy mill, or if you sell online, you're a puppy mill.
Yeah.
Like this is getting it down to how are the animals being treated, and that defines whether it's a puppy mill.
And that's how we're trying to flip the script, right? Because we've always said ethical breeders don't do this, puppy mills do this. But when you're hiding behind labels, no one's going to admit to being a puppy mill. Everyone's going to say they're ethical and responsible. So if we just have random titles out there that anyone can adopt, it doesn't mean anything. So unless you're really talking to the public about what a puppy mill is and how to avoid it, we're just whitewashing them with labels, it feels like. So
yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a pretty strong definition. Do we want to hop into our spreadsheet that we've been working on, our talking points?
Are this not that?
Are this not that? Yeah. And so this also was inspired by Spark. They created a this not that type document, or I don't know if they created it, but Wisconsin Humane is one that we were able to see what they put out for their volunteers and their staff. And it was very much how they talk about their community and how when people come and surrender animals, how you talk to them and about them matters, especially on social media. So we were kind of seeing what the sheltering world was doing, and we decided to make our own. So the first one was really easy, and we started a change a while back, but it was, we try not to say the phrase, we educate about puppy mills anymore. And that one came from one of our volunteers, Rachel from Wisconsin, who literally one day was like, that feels weird to me. Like, it seems like we're on uneven footing. It's assuming that I'm educated and you're uneducated because you don't know what I know. But there's also a whole lot of stuff you know that I don't, right? So by going into it saying, I'm educating you, it puts me on a pedestal and I'm speaking at you, and there's no room for conversation in that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's something that wouldn't occur to me, but I can see how it would other people.
Yeah. It's just that uneven footing.
Yeah.
So I think Rachel back in the day had said we spark conversation. You feel like that term's a little overused, which is fair.
Spark conversation is everywhere. Yeah, which is fine if it's effective. Yeah. But yeah, that's moving towards being more discussion based. And I can see how the word educate, like if someone comes and they're like, here's what I'm doing. And my response is, let me educate you about that. Versus, so tell me more about that.
Yeah.
So like, let's talk about this. And like, what's your reasoning for doing it this way? And what's like, I can still get to the same result without being like, you're wrong. Let me educate you.
Right.
Yeah.
And that goes into, like we've said for years, we always meet people where they're at, because a lot of the people that come to us, it's because they already bought a dog. They had a bad experience. And so they reach out to us. If we shame them, if we make them feel bad, whatever, that's not going to help them make better choices in the future, right? Or different choices in the future. So you have to meet them where they're at, not where you want them to be. And I think that's also, people struggle a bit with our field research for that same reason. We are meeting people where they're at and not trying to hold people to a pedestal that we think is important.
Right.
So,
You don't have to get perfect and then come to us.
Right.
Yeah.
Because none of us are perfect.
Right.
Not a single person on this planet.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so the next phrase that we talked about, and we say this all the time, but Amish puppy mills, or what I'm seeing now, because people think that they've heard our message. Now on social media, they just say, these dogs came from an Amish commercial breeder.
So the perception is that the problem is Amish puppy mills. So it's okay to say Amish commercial breeder when really the problem is Amish.
Yeah, like it's weird, right? Why do we put that word in there? And they're doing it to make you picture something specific.
Right.
And that thing they're trying to get you to picture isn't good.
Yeah.
Right? They've created a stereotype and they're leaning into that. So for us, we're just saying, don't even say the word Amish. Like,
it's irrelevant.
Right.
It's a facility where, if you're talking about a facility where dogs are not being treated well, talk about a facility where dogs are not being treated well. The religion or cultural beliefs of the people who run it are irrelevant.
Right. And that religion isn't based on dog breeding.
Right.
So it's not like you can say that every and all person who participates in that religion breeds dogs, first of all, or breeds dogs inhumanely. Right. So I feel like people really heard what we were saying and they were like, you're right. We shouldn't call them all Amish puppy mills. And thank you for getting to that point.
Yes.
But the next challenge is just stop saying that word.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We talked about it today. You wouldn't put Catholic there.
Right.
You wouldn't put Jewish there. You wouldn't put Buddhist there. Like, it is so weird. And I understand why people do it, but you wouldn't put other labels there.
Yeah.
To try to get a specific point across that you're trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that one's going to take a while to overcome. I don't know what it's going to take to get people to overcome that. I see that hopefully our volunteers, our people can come along with the messaging. But like when I'm out hanging out in Reddit or, wherever in comments, man, that one is in every comment. And even when somebody just says, I just bought this dog and I think it was from a puppy mill, they don't even say anything about Amish. Someone in the comments is going to say Amish puppy mills or all Amish people suck. I'm like, oh my goodness, no one even was talking about Amish people. Like what? It has to be said. It's like that's some people's personal mantra that they just have to get it into every conversation. So yeah, I feel like that's a hurdle to overcome.
And it's hard because in some states there are a higher volume of Amish breeders.
Right.
And when you have a higher volume of anything, you're going to have a higher volume of bad actors too, right?
Yep.
And so when you are in Pennsylvania and you're in Ohio and it feels personal to you because there's so many people of that faith that are doing something you disagree with, you want to stereotype. And
and it feels like all Amish breeders are bad. All breeders are Amish because that's what you're surrounded with. Whereas somebody, I'm guessing Missouri doesn't have as many Amish breeders.
No, I think Iowa and Missouri typically have more English breeders. There are pockets of Amish, but when you're in Ohio and Pennsylvania and Indiana, like that's the culture. There are a lot more Amish communities there.
So for somebody in Iowa or Missouri to just assume all puppy mills are Amish would feel weird.
Right.
Because we know lots of breeders and not great breeders who are not.
Right.
So to us, it's like, why would you make that distinction?
Well, honestly, I was guilty of it. I did a whole article years ago saying just how many Amish puppy mills were in the country, and I assumed they were all puppy mills, and I assumed they were all Amish based on their last name, which is weird too, because there are lots of people who have different last names that aren't Amish, I guess. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's one of my earliest puppy mill memories from when I first met you, was that statement that it's Amish breeders. They're the worst. They're the ones causing all the problems.
And that was my lens as a rescue person, like going into those facilities and getting dogs out from what I perceive as the worst conditions. Yeah, I'm going to draw the line that all Amish are, because my only experience with Amish people at that time were the ones surrendering dogs because they wanted to get rid of them.
Yeah.
So you have to broaden yourself and have new experiences if you want to see the world differently.
Yeah.
Or trust the people that are experiencing something different.
Yeah,
so.
that was a fun thing when I started here, was realizing that narrative had shifted, and it's in my mind was a credit to Mindy, because that is something I remember you being very passionate about.
Yeah.
And then when I re-enter this world, it's like, oh, she's changed that messaging. Like, good job out of you, because that's not easy to do. It's not easy to say, oh my goodness, I just made an assumption about an entire population of people that was not fair.
Right. And the silly thing is, like, I didn't know I was doing it at the time. Like, I was just like, no, this is how it is.
Right.
I believed with my full chest.
Everyone
everything I was saying
has been this.
Right.
So why would you think otherwise?
Right.
Yeah.
So I do think that's an easier term for people to change, though. Like, if you just think about it from a lens of, oh yeah, that's not really fair. All women are. All men are. Like, if we start saying all, we're gonna get into some warm water there. But that kind of leads into our next one. All commercial breeders are, or all USDA licensed breeders are. That's another thing we were very guilty of proliferating, like really putting into the public vernacular, is that it's all or nothing.
Yeah.
We were just talking this morning about how there's an article talking about how the Trump administration wants to crack down on puppy mills. And the article itself said they oversee over 2,000 USDA licensed puppy mills. And this was like a news article saying that every USDA breeder is a puppy mill. And that's tough. We've seen evidence that that's not the case, first of all. But there are rescues that also have this license type, because it's how you sell, not how you're raising. For them, it's how they sell, not how they're raising, because they're dealers typically. But so it's just very weird that we also did the same thing there, when it's just a license type.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that was one that's always struck me as weird from when I started here. It was like, why would because someone is licensed mean that they're a puppy mill? Like, what's the connection there? If I'm committed to treating dogs badly, I'm going to intentionally go get a license to do it. I don't know. That one always, that messes me up. But
I think that we need to remind people, like, the stuff you can say still matters. So you can say some USDA kennels are puppy mills. The USDA absolutely licenses kennels that we would call puppy mills. Like, we see it.
Because they're licensed does not mean they are following all the rules and doing all the right thing.
Right. It's another label that people should be weary of. Like, I don't partake in labels necessarily, like to buy things because of a label, but some people do, and they have a lot of faith in USDA certified, right? Like, when you think of meat, USDA organic, people think, yeah, let's go for that. The people who see past labels are like, oh, that's different than shopping from a small humane farmer, right? Or something along those lines. So trying to pivot how we talk about it matters. You could say something like licensing without meaningful enforcement leads to puppy mills, right? Like, there are still legal puppy mills that exist, but not using that all or nothing type terminology is helpful.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. I get it.
Again, we go down to, I'm going to combine two. They're kind of in different rows on our sheet, but all pet store puppies are, and all puppies sold online are.
Yeah.
And
I always say never all, never none. Like, these are the alls.
Yeah. And so this has been a hard thing for the public advocates, I think, to pivot along with us. When we say all pet store puppies come from puppy mills, like, that has never been a phrase that had any legal standing. It wasn't legally sound. And so I go back to our bus ad here in Ames. The first version of it said all pets are puppies. I had to come back and say some, right? Or other organizations say 99% of, or nearly all. Like everyone has always leaned into that, okay, maybe not everybody, right? Maybe not everybody. But now that we're kind of seeing a different side of it, we are seeing that it for sure isn't everybody. So just having grace in those moments. You don't have to like that breeders are selling to a pet store.
Right.
Because also I think it's important to meet your breeder. If you're buying, you should do in-person sales. I think that that's the most responsible way to do it. Not everybody is. So if they're going to a pet store and they research their breeder and they find out that breeder isn't a puppy mill, like we look silly. We look like liars. Or if lawmakers are trying to pass an ordinance or trying to pass a bill, and we're sitting there saying, no, but it's all of them. You can't trust them. It's all of them. It sounds like some weird criminal conspiracy, and we're not even able to see the faults in our language sometimes, and lawmakers do see through that.
Yeah, we lose credibility.
We do.
Yeah, and like you said, you can argue that a pet store is not the best place to sell a dog, but that's not the best route for someone to get a dog. But that still doesn't negate the fact that that dog may have been bred and raised well before it got to that pet store. You can have all kinds of other issues about the pet store, about the transportation, about any of that. That dog still could have come from
a humane place. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we really need to start drawing lines with our definitions and how we talk. Because before it was no matter what, how you sell dictates who you are, which gets into the online part of this conversation, because now we've said it for years. If you buy online, you're supporting a puppy mill. What does that mean? Is that your own personal website, bailingoutbenji.com? Is that through puppies.com, which is a marketplace where you upload your own puppies? Or is that through a brokering website where they do the sales for you? Like there's so many different types of online that we can't paint everybody with that brush, because you could be a wonderful breeder with your own website, and other people will say, don't buy online. If you can do it, then it's bad. That's just the nature of sales too.
Yeah. You know that I love these conversations because we go around and around all the time, because I am literal as heck. Like every word means exactly what that word means in my brain.
Yeah.
Which is a whole thing I should probably evaluate. But so to me, it is like, that is my pushback when I hear somebody say something and I'm like, well, what do you mean by that? And they're like, well, I mean, obviously I don't mean all. I'm like, okay, but what you said was all. So when you say all, I'm hearing all. And then you're like, well, obviously not all. Okay, well, so obviously say it differently.
Yeah.
Like, then don't say all.
Right.
So yeah, these feed my soul, these kinds of conversations, because, and we've even gotten around to the words like, so like, what do we say? Like if we're like humane breeder or ethical breeder, and then you're like, well, humane has like, that's what's my opinion of humane versus your opinion of humane. Is this humane versus that's humane? And so it is hard. It's very hard to come up with common language that is accurate, but it's important.
Using those terms, humane, ethical, responsible, even puppy mill, those are all terms that we can adopt for ourselves in different ways. No breeder will ever say they're a puppy mill. Every breeder will tell you they're responsible and ethical.
Right.
So it's like, how do you give the public the tools they need to do the right thing in every scenario?
Yes.
And if we just say, look for the phrase responsible, ethical, it's
find out what that means to that breeder. What does that mean to you that you're responsible and ethical?
Right. And through our field research too, we've kind of learned some things. So like when we say reputable breeders don't sell to pet stores, breed clubs, and this is something that we talk about all the time, these like AKC breed clubs for greyhounds or Samoyeds or whatever, they might have a rule that says our breeders will not sell to pet stores. Well, if you're a breeder who has 3 or 4 breeds of dog, 2, 3, 4 breeds of dog, and one of them is under your breed club and you can't sell it to a pet store, well, you just sell those ones online, and the other dogs you breed can still go to pet stores. So like, even having weird arbitrary rules like that, members are getting around those rules. Like, they're just silly things that we put in place to make ourselves feel better.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. We didn't know that until we started like meeting breeders, and they're like, no, this is just kind of how the world operates. Like, we just don't sell that breed to the pet store. That breed goes on our personal website.
Yeah. But that advocate group gets to say, we did this thing and they can no longer do this. And look at us, we solved the problem.
Yeah.
But you didn't, because
Right.
they're just doing it differently.
Yeah. And so again, it's that when we say ethical, reputable, but who's judging?
Right.
What do those words mean?
Right.
No one really knows.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
yeah. It's tough, but I think we're getting there. I think people are open to it. Well, we're also going to do this similar thing. We're going to do this, but through the lens of policy later, because there's a lot of different ways we could talk about policy and still get our points across. But this one I wanted to mention right away. When it comes to policy, using the phrase, we are ending the puppy mill pipeline into the state. I used to say it. I've probably typed that phrase 1,000 times in the last few years because that's the vernacular we were given, right? That's the vernacular handed down to us. That's what we're supposed to say. Pet store ordinances specifically are not ending the puppy mill pipeline. It's a speed bump. It's slowing it down. It's shutting off one facet. However you want to word it, it is not ending puppy mills in your state. And when that headline hits the news, people think that's what happened. So Illinois, the headlines read, puppy mills banned, puppy mill sales banned in Illinois. If you're a random consumer who doesn't follow any of us on Facebook, you think it's safe to buy in every situation now. That headline didn't say anything about pet stores. It said puppy mill sales banned in Illinois. And even if it said in stores afterwards, right? Like the public doesn't read beyond that.
Right. And we'll have people come to our tables. I've had it at a tabling event, and they'll be like, I thought puppy mills were outlawed. I thought puppy mills were illegal. Like, yeah, no, they're not.
We wouldn't exist.
Yeah, but it's headlines like that make people think that. And I was thinking, as you were talking about the pipeline being turned off, that the friend of mine from Connecticut that just posted about the puppy mill pipeline in Connecticut because of New York enacting their ban. That pipeline just flipped across the border, and now they're all going into Connecticut. So it's not not effective.
But still, that lens is only pet stores. The people who are like really proponents of that bill, they're like, well, we shut off pet stores in New York, and now they're just going to open in Connecticut and New Jersey, and so we have to focus our efforts there.
Yeah.
But they're ignoring the fact that there are rescues in the New Jersey area who we've talked about on this podcast who broker for puppy mills. Like truly, they're just getting hundreds of puppies that they resell. This ordinance doesn't affect them.
No.
This bill didn't affect them, or online, right? And so when we say it is ending something, that seems really definitive, and it doesn't leave room for us having to go back and do more work in that state.
Right.
So California, we ended the puppy mill pipeline in 2017 when that bill passed. Well, then we had to go back in 2019 and strengthen that bill to make sure no bad actors were getting around it. Well, then we had to go back again and again. And every headline is reading, California cracks down on puppy mills. And it's like, but are they?
Right. And
like,
the common person is like, haven't we done this?
Didn't we
crack down on this last year? Yeah. And I feel like focusing so much on pet stores to the consumer who is not involved in this and is just, on the sidelines wanting to get a dog. When the focus is so heavy on saying, by banning pet store sales in New York, we have ended the puppy mill pipeline. That sends the message to me that as long as I don't buy from a store, I'm okay.
Right.
So stores were clearly the problem because we have banned that. So if I buy from this person online, I'm good,
right?
Because the stores were where the problem was, and we've stopped that. So good job. That's not a threat anymore. Or if I'm in a different state where there are still stores, I'm like, well, clearly all of these states are working to shut down the stores. So that's a problem. I'm going to avoid those stores.
Right.
These guys are okay because they're not a store.
Yeah. And again, there's no tools. So it's like when they're buying online, what does that mean? Like if we're just like, yes, go, do you. And now we see advocacy groups saying, comma, or online. Don't shop in pet stores, comma, or online. Where is the everyday person supposed to get a dog? And so without having that part of the conversation, we are just leaving everybody up to make up their own mind based on all of the broken definitions we all have shared across the world. And then it doesn't help in California. So are there no puppy mills? Is it safe to buy in every scenario in California now? No, we have to have boots on the ground people there still educating people about safe and responsible ways to get a new pet, whether you're buying or adopting.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, I think we're going to end up doing we are going to release this type of language change model, whatever we want to call it, to the world, probably at the time that we release this episode. The goal is to have something about policy. So people can at least see if you're working on a pet store ban in your state, don't call it a humane pet store bill, because other animals are still being bred and sold in those stores, right? Not just puppies and kittens. Ethical sales bill. What does ethical mean, first of all? And then, of course, we've got rescues who source from puppy mills or from breeders. And then we have online. So like when we use those little phrases for policy, it's quick and easy for the public to hear and understand and support. It is not always reflective of what the bill actually does.
Right.
So that'll be a whole
And is it safe to say that sometimes when we're pushing for these policy changes, we are willing to take we as in, not bailing out Benji, but all the we's that are fighting for policy change, we are willing to take an incremental win that we in our hearts know is not going to solve the problem, but it's a win that we can talk about and celebrate. Even though we know, this is not it, but it's something, and we can tell our supporters we did this thing, we passed this thing.
It's something you can measure. It's something you can say we definitively did on paper. When Alexis and I are doing our research afterwards, we're seeing the gaps in the policy. So for us, seeing the incremental wins as progress is important, but we see that as maybe these are sourcing bills that affect online and affect rescues. Maybe these are different types of policies or even our work in the field, right? Like we see incremental wins very differently than how you're portraying that incremental win. Because yes, that is the thing. It's like we'll get to online later.
When it's policy, incremental wins aren't as exciting.
Right.
So when we're meeting a breeder and we're seeing incremental changes, that's exciting. They're moving in the right direction. They've got the right idea. They've got good motivations. But when it's policy, that's hard to get through and then hard to tweak after the fact. So you really want to get it right the first time, and it's harder.
Right.
It's harder to get things passed when they're that detailed. It's harder to get people excited when you're putting that much into it. It's easier to just float the easy thing through, but it's important.
And it's the other thing that we found with policy is it is your way or it is my way, and there's no compromise. So these bills are always one-sided.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard place to be. So in Colorado a few years ago, we were working on, I think it was like a statewide ban, and it kind of, through the legislative process, because this is how policy works, a lot of things happened. A lot of compromises happened, and it turned into like a consumer transparency bill. The pet stores had to say online and in person who they buy from, all of that stuff. We had groups actively go on social media and try to kill the bill because it wasn't what they wanted. So they did not want a transparency bill to pass. And so publicly telling people, no, contact your lawmakers and tell them you don't want this, is very different than allowing this progress type bill, this incremental change to go in place, because they would have rather no bill passed. And thankfully the transparency bill did. But that's kind of what we face in policy. People see it as all or nothing. Yeah. And then if you even try to work with the other side to have something meaningful happen in the middle,
that's a loss.
That's a loss.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know in what world we forgot that compromise is the adult thing to do. It's very rare we all get exactly what we want.
Right.
So having hard conversations, maybe knowing that each side is going to have to give up a little bit, is really important in the long haul when it comes to having effective policy that actually has a change for the animals. So our next phrase, which we've talked about probably ad nauseum, adopt, don't shop.
Yeah.
So personal mantra, right?
Mhm.
If you want to adopt, great. That's how you and I are, right? We
Mhm.
adopt our dogs. Typically, I find my dogs. Like, I don't even know how many adoption
Your
fees.
dogs adopt you.
My dogs adopt me, right? But we all come to dogs in our own way.
Mhm.
And so instead of saying adopt or shop, or sorry, instead of saying adopt, don't shop, you still can tell people that's how you feel, but don't assume that's a hard and fast rule. Like that is your mantra. We like to say, first of all, you can say choose adoption as your first option. I love it when it rhymes. I think it's cute. You can ask people to go to the shelter and rescue, but you have to do it knowing that they're probably still going to buy. And then you have to be ready to meet them where they're at and help them buy humanely and responsibly.
Yeah.
But and then the other phrase would be adopt or shop responsibly, which you chatted about because you had no idea.
No, I thought it was adopt is one option and shop responsibly is the other option. It didn't occur to me that the word responsibly applied to both of those.
Yeah.
Because much like I was saying, like when all the target is at pet stores, I'm going to think pet stores are the problem, the only problem. And in my world, hearing adopt or shop responsibly means if you're going to adopt, adopt. If you're going to shop, make sure you're being responsible about it. And so to me, it says adoption is always safe, but if you're going to shop, go for it, but be careful. There's a lot of rules you need to follow. There's a lot of checklists. You need to ask a lot of questions. So it's do this thing or do this thing responsibly. So that was a light bulb when I was like, oh, it's adopt responsibly or shop responsibly.
And just like with breeders, there are a world of breeders that are doing it well and doing it humanely. And then there are people that are the anchor, dragging them backwards and making them live that puppy mill name and reputation. The rescue community is the same way. So we know wonderful rescues that are right there helping animals in every situation. They get their hands dirty, they're doing it. Then we have rescues who I'm just going to kind of say they're from the coasts. We track them. They will fly to the Midwest. They will go to dog auctions. They will buy thousands of dollars worth of dogs and then go back to their home state and adopt out these purebred dogs, these little breeds that people really want. And so what does that messaging send? Like, what are we telling to the public? No, you can't go to the pet store in your town and get that Shih Tzu. But don't worry, you can go to that rescue and get the Shih Tzu, and it's fine because they're a rescue. But they bought that puppy from likely the same place the pet store bought the puppy from. And so when we are seeing all of that behind the scenes and we're seeing these actions of the less ethical sourcing of rescues, that's why it's hard for us to use blanket policy and blanket
You're always
terms.
good to adopt.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And that's a thing I can say public has no idea.
No,
at least not here.
No,
I can't speak to the ones like on the coast, but here it's no questions asked. If it's a shelter or a rescue,
right?
Yeah, I until I started working here, it did not occur to me that there could be bad practices I'm supporting by adopting from one of these organizations.
Well, and the goal is to not need rescues anymore, right? The goal is to not have a surplus of dogs. So we have to follow this train of thought through. If we get rid of all the puppy mills and all the bad breeders who aren't helping to rehome their own dogs, groups like National Mill Dog Rescue won't exist anymore. You know, these groups that have a ton of these commercially bred dogs that are wanted by the public, these breeds that are wanted, now the rescues won't have that source. So what do? Where do they go? And I think sometimes that also drives rescues in how they source. Instead of being there to save animals in need, sometimes they are looking for breeds, ages, whatever, that they know they can get adopted out fast. Whether or not that helps pay for the vet bills of dogs that are slower to adopt out is another conversation. But we are seeing it, and it's a problem, and ignoring it makes us seem foolish, especially since the other side, quote unquote, is so loud about it in policy rooms. They are the ones telling us rescues are doing retail work. They're buying and reselling dogs, and they know that because they're the ones the rescues are buying from.
I was to say the other side you're talking about is breeders.
Sorry, yeah. So when we're talking to breeders and brokers, and they're like, "Oh no, these rescues, they're coming straight to us. Like, here's what they pay," and we can see that backed up with our documents, right? Like a rescue. I asked a few weeks ago, "Do you buy from this broker?" Because I see their transport or transfer paperwork, and I've known this rescue forever. So I just reached out and I was like, hey, I always see these. Do you pay for the dogs? And she was like, yes, we do, but we don't pay much. And then she kind of like gave me how her organization works. But then she was like, wait, so how do you see these documents? And I was like, well, you're a customer of that broker. Of course I see the documents the same way I see the pet store documents.
Right.
So rescues don't always understand, like, just because we haven't or it hasn't been talked about publicly doesn't mean their sourcing habits aren't being monitored.
Right. And it may not even occur to you, like when you get that perspective of like, no, you're in the same camp as the pet store.
Yeah.
Like you're paying less than the pet store is, but you're doing the same thing. It's the same transaction.
Right.
It's just that they are likely paying more for the dog, selling at a higher markup. You're still paying for the dog and charging an adoption fee, but and I'm not here to say which is like that they're bad for doing that. I'm just saying that puts you in that same class.
Yeah.
And that may not even be something that has registered like, oh yeah, gosh.
Which is where the conversation comes in when it comes to licensing rescues and shelters, or rescues mainly. Right now the USDA doesn't really require rescues to be licensed unless they are in the habit of buying and reselling dogs. That makes you a dealer. States don't always license rescues, just like they don't always license breeders. So across the board, it's just the dog industry is unregulated across the board. There are very few licensed dog breeders. The rest are all operating off the grid. And it's the same with rescues. A lot of them operate without any oversight. Shelters are typically public facing because they have a building and they, in many states, have to be inspected, but rescues and breeders are kind of different.
Yeah. So for licensing, when you talk about buying and selling dogs, is an adoption fee considered a sale?
Probably depending on the state.
Yeah.
In the breeding world, they say it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Like they will die on the hill that an adoption fee is still a sale.
Yeah.
So for us, it's kind of like, what's the spectrum of the adoption fee? This is a whole nother conversation, but like there are rescues out there who get a puppy. It'll be an 8-week, 10-week-old puppy from a breeding facility or a broker, and then they adopt it out for $1,500 or $1,600. That's your face, right? So that's a really high fee, and that gives you pause.
Yeah.
And I know
that doesn't feel like an adoption fee.
It feels like a sale, right?
Yes.
So I don't know if there's ever going to be a good definition, if there's ever going to be a good line. What kind of adoption fee is ethical versus sale? Like, I don't know if we're ever going to get to the bottom of any of that.
Yeah, you can never figure out where it flips from being an adoption fee to a sale on that spectrum of charges.
But the perception being, if you're getting a dog for $150 or $200 from a breeding facility, and then you are flipping it for a way higher cost, that could be seen as a sale. And that's why those types of rescues are referred to as like quote unquote retail rescues. I don't like that phrase because I think it's a derogatory term that the pet industry created to try and say, well, look how bad they are too. If you think we're bad, look at them.
It's like, here's a rescue, here's a store, and these are in between. These are a rescue and a store.
That's
not a store, but a retail.
Right. Yeah. And again, our lens is supported by the fact that we see rescues that behave poorly, and then we see rescues that behave great. So how do we have that same energy across the spectrum when it comes to the pet industry? So, all right. The last one we have is that Missouri is the puppy mill capital of the world.
Yay, Missouri, you did it.
You did it. You did it. You're doing great, sweetie.
But the data shows.
Right. So it depends on how you look at the data. And this is why language is important. If you look at a piece of paper, on paper, Missouri has almost 1,000 licensed breeders. Okay. You and I say Missouri has 1,000 licensed breeders. Mindy, 5 years ago, and a lot of advocates still would say Missouri has 1,000 puppy mills. Yeah. So that is why Missouri is the capital. Yeah. Because it has the highest volume of regulated breeders.
And so my problem with that is, first of all, you're assuming license means puppy mill.
Yes.
And you're assuming there are not also puppy mills operating without a license. Yes. Like my guess is if there's 1,000 licensed breeders, there's a lot of unlicensed breeders.
Yes.
And some of those are likely puppy mills as well. So like I can poke multiple holes in the argument that 1,000 licensed breeders equals 1,000 puppy mills.
Right.
Like first of all, why does 1-to-1 have to correlate? And secondly, what about all the unlicensed people?
Right. So that's where that phrase comes in,
Okay.
right? And the perception is
that, and that's the highest number. 1,000 licensed breeders is the highest number of any state
in right now currently. Yes.
Okay.
And that's typically looking at the federal number because they have the highest number of USDA.
Yeah.
State we're really getting into, and obviously Missouri has a higher state license number too. But when we look at states like Indiana has a very high volume of USDA breeders, but because their state threshold for licensing is 20 females, they have like 800 that we've been tracking so far, unlicensed breeders. And that's because they don't meet the definition, the narrow definition of who needs a USDA license, and they don't meet their state license. So when we're measuring puppy mills, quote unquote, based on the number of licensed breeders, that leaves a lot of room for error. It doesn't take into account California, that has no licensing standards and 0 USDA breeders for the most part, or Florida or Tennessee or other states.
Yeah.
And so you can talk about Missouri if you want to still point to Missouri being an issue, and you can say 60% of the breeders in Missouri had violations in 5 years. That's a statistic you can talk about. We can give you that statistic for every state across the country if you want, but it isn't helpful to any cause if you only say Missouri is the puppy mill capital. People also say it about Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is the puppy mill capital of the East. And it's like, what you're really saying is there's a high volume of licensed dog breeders that you're tracking because no one is tracking the unlicensed ones, at least in the volume like we are.
Yeah.
So trying to get a handle on what unlicensed looks like. And then also, my God, since we're talking about definitions, the term unlicensed encapsulates so many different types of breeding operations. So you've got preservation breeders who are AKC hobby breeders for their Afghan hounds, and they care about the bloodlines and yada, 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 like all of those things. Some people would call them ethical. In our system, they're marked as unlicensed because that's what they are. They're unregulated and unlicensed. But then there are also facilities that have 20 dogs that are, say, 18 females in Indiana, and they're unlicensed because they're under that threshold. Comparing those two facilities are very different, right? But in our terminology, they're one thing. They're both unlicensed.
But as long as the word unlicensed doesn't mean bad, then it's fine that they're both listed as unlicensed. That's, again, my literal brain means they do not possess a license.
Right.
Then the next step is to figure out, should they?
Yep.
And if we decide both of them don't need to, they don't meet any of those requirements, cool. The next step is, how are they raising their dogs?
Right.
How are they breeding their dogs? Like, it's not, unlicensed is just, did you apply for a piece of paper and did you get it?
Right. And are you inspected or whatever?
It doesn't speak to good or bad.
Right. So I think that's why we put the Missouri thing in here, because it brings so many of those problems of the language we use and the wording we use. And Missouri gets a bad rap, rightly so. Like, because it was the largest state for dog breeders, like Prop B had to pass, and even that got watered down. It was forever ago. We shouldn't still talk about it. We need more upgrades. But like, when that passed, it really lowered the number of licensed breeders in the state because they couldn't even meet those standards that were upgraded at the time. So like,
but lowering the number of licensed breeders doesn't necessarily lower the number of breeders.
Right.
Correct?
Yes.
They're just now operating without a license.
Right. And we're tracking that too. So a lot of the other groups will measure success by the number of USDA going down. I have an article on our website from like 5 years ago, and it's called Data on the Decline. And I say, look, it used to be 5,000 licensees, and now we're down to just under 3,000. Our work is working. And I showed this. I mean, I made a little graph for it. I can picture it right now. At the time, that felt like a win. That felt like a success. But now that we are really expanding how we do our work, we are seeing that these unlicensed breeders are selling online. They're selling to dog auctions. They're selling to rescues. Like, they found a new market away from just pet stores.
It still breaks my brain that the perception is that someone without a license is performing better than someone with a license. That breaks my brain.
I think it's because a lot of people think that the minute you cancel, well, you're done. They see a canceled license.
So when you're celebrating 5,000 down to 2,000, it's because the perception is that 3,000 people are no longer breeding. I see.
Yes. So that's
and in my mind, I'm like, no, Like, why would they?
Right.
They've got a whole business built. They're just doing it without a
Right,
license.
right. And there's one place in South Dakota, they had a lot of violations. They canceled their USDA license and they had like well over 100 dogs when they were licensed. Now they're unlicensed. I'm seeing that they're selling online a lot of different breeds, a lot of puppies, but don't worry, they don't need a USDA license because they just use flight nannies. So because they're making that sale in person by sending a flight nanny with the puppy to the buyer or meeting the buyer at the airport, they don't need any licensing whatsoever because South Dakota is an unregulated state. So other organizations might see that cancellation as a win. And I and Alexis are frustrated behind the scenes because we're like, no, now we are terrified for those dogs. That was a problematic facility with violations. And now they just get to operate however they want with zero oversight. And we get comments on Facebook where some people get grumpy with us that we are supporting the regulation of breeders. And it's weird how they try to connect the dots. But if no one's looking at them, isn't that scarier? If no one is seeing those dogs?
And as a consumer, I want to know it's being regulated.
Yeah.
I want to know there's oversight, even if we can argue that the USDA oversight is lacking.
Yeah, for sure.
As are a lot of governmental oversight processes. Like, it's not a perfect system, but it's something more than nothing.
Right.
And so to me as a consumer, if I am supporting a breeder, I want to know they're functioning under some sort of set of rules and expectations versus being able to do whatever they want. So to me, outside of animal advocacy work, this is where my brain just gets broken. I don't understand why. I understand that the USDA licensing has been faulty and all of that. So I get that that's there. But how is a faulty system still worse than no system?
See, and I think that's, again, if we follow our logic through, I think that's where the path we were on was leading us. Abolishing the USDA, getting rid of it altogether without anything to pick up the slack. That's a terrible idea. Do I like the USDA? No. Do I think that they have good standards and are helping animals? No. They're here for commerce. They're here to protect agriculture. Like, that's what the USDA is.
Okay.
But if we were to get rid of it, now we just have all of these unregulated facilities operating across the country. So if you're going to rebuild something, you have to start now before you abolish.
Right.
And I think that's the fear with these pet store bans. Like, at the time, and I think that, again, they did serve their purpose. It sent a very loud message to the industry that the public wants something different. And a lot of the worst pet stores and breeding facilities have closed. But that can't be our only focus. Right. So right now we're seeing that mess. Like, if we abolish all the pet stores, people are going online. Right. We weren't in tandem educating the public about online and the dangers of online. For 20 years, we have just been saying no pet stores. But we're doing this puppies.com research right now, and we're seeing that breeders have been selling on their website for 22 years. And so it's like, this has been an constant thing that's been happening that we've all willingly ignored. And so you can't abolish one without having a system ready and in place for another. Right. And we do have states like Indiana, Minnesota, and Texas who have taken dog breeding away from the Department of Ag, and they're in something else, whether it's like Board of Animal Health or licensing and registration. Like, they have a different department overseeing it. But until that exists and that infrastructure exists, we have to exist in the world as it is.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, I'm really excited for this year. Like, I really think more people are getting it. It's been a tough, we're like a week and a half into the new year, and it's already been a tough year in the world.
Yeah.
And stressful, but also policy is coming, and people, they want us to take a stand. They want us to have all the right answers all the time. And we're just trying to give perspective of your work might be working in some scenarios, but it is also creating a different beast that we have to deal with.
Right.
And
yep.
So the language we use matters.
Yeah. And I think one of the things I love about this tool, the say this, not that, is it's not just say this, not that. There's rationale. There's very thorough reasoning why. So I know a lot of the times when we tell people we're no longer using this wording, we're no longer using this messaging, then the pushback is, well, now you've changed your mission, or you're flip-flopping, you're waffling, you're now supporting the other side. And having first of all, that's not how it works in any place. And if you are a human who has never changed your thought process on anything ever since the day you were born, I have concerns. Like we all do this all the time. When you know better, you do better. And so I think that the rationale in this document really, really helps. So if there is something where I've been saying this forever, and now you're telling me we're going to say this, and I'm like, what? That does not mesh with my training.
Right.
Having that rationale there of why we're doing that really helps to be like, oh, I see now how that messaging was causing this result, but flipping it to this will help us get to this place. And so that I think is important too, to have that explanation versus just telling people we're not using those words anymore.
Well, and the grace of knowing like we're not perfect. Like I say things, we talk too much, right? We're talking every single week. I say the wrong thing more often than I say the right thing. That's human nature. So even us suggesting these things, you're not going to be perfect. Like we are unlearning decades of slogans and stereotypes that we were fed. And so now we have to unlearn a lot of those like muscles that we've strengthened over the years, and we have to retrain them to flex in different ways. And that is uncomfortable. It should be, because the way we were doing things wasn't direct. It wasn't ethical. Our definition of ethical, we'll say. And so now we're just trying to change it. But no, you are not perfect. I'm not perfect. The people listening, trying to change, are going to slip up. But just taking that accountability of being like, oh, wait, let me reword that. Let me rephrase that is super powerful.
And we've done it in other areas. We can do it. You know, we can do hard things. And like I said earlier, when I was a kid, we didn't wear seatbelts. We drank when we drove, and we throw garbage on the side of the street. For the most part, we don't do those things anymore as a culture.
Right.
We can learn to change. We can learn to, or certain words. Oh my gracious. Like I'll watch a movie that I loved as a kid, and now I'm mortified. Like, oh my goodness.
Like how many people did I tell I liked that movie to? Because I should not.
You could not say those things now. And that's fine. Like once you learn something is not appropriate or hurtful to someone else, but there's literally tons of words in the English language. Find a different one.
Right.
It's not hard. There's lots to choose from, and some of them are really fun. So we can pivot our language.
Yeah. And I think this is fun. It is a challenge to have to rethink how you've always done something. It's not for the, I don't want to say lazy, but it's not for the lazy. Right? It is active work that we are doing. We didn't just wake up one day and have a new set of language.
If you really want to make a difference, if you're really here to make a difference and to connect with people who maybe have not been in the conversation, or who you're wanting to bring into this work, it's important. It matters a lot. And so it's worth it to do the extra hard work to make sure that your messaging makes sense. If you're not that person and you just want to like get clicks, then the other language is going to get you more clicks. But
it will, right?
But if you're really wanting to make change and move the conversation forward, it's important to take stock of how the words you're using are being perceived and received by whoever the other party is that you're talking to.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So by the time this airs, my challenge for myself is to have this ready in public for our website.
Okay.
And to have something on social media that people can, as they're hearing us talk about it, they can go and see this resource for themselves. And then, give us feedback. I don't know if we'll take it. Just kidding. But like, we're always open.
Yeah. And it's a good way to have other conversations about, or maybe things that we didn't think about. And I'm sure in a few years, some of the say this will be in the don't say that column. Right. Like as we learn more and grow more and realize more.
Yeah. And there might be more things we end up adding to it because we realize other slogans are outdated or things like that, or need further explanation.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, thank you for being on this journey with us, because it definitely is a journey. We are trying every day to try to present our best foot forward and present our best selves. So it's good. But I'm excited for our podcast this year. I feel like, our work in general, but I feel like we're really leaning into, nope, this is all positive, and we are going for it.
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, thank you all for listening to us again this week, and we will catch you next time. Bye.